be connecting with Dr. Ronald Caplan. He is just a well-versed wealth of knowledge, author of multiple books. But today, what we're going to build our discussion around is the second edition of his book, Lifelong Strategy. But Dr. Caplan, before we dive into that, for those that may have not heard you on one of our previous discussions, give us a little overview of your background and what led you to the current roles that you're playing out there.
Well, sure. I'm by training an obstetrician gynecologist. I started out at McGill University in Canada, went through training there, ended up on the faculty, and then transferred over to the faculty of Cornell University Medical College in New York, where I lived out most of my career. And at some point, they named me emeritus associate professor, which means God bless you, retired, or something like that. And I've always written. My medical writing encompassed two major textbooks in obstetrics and gynecology, which were translated into multiple languages. And this book just came about over a long number of years. The ideas were there and the experiences were there, and my experience with taking care of patients, being in an operating room, all those things over many, many years led me to think of how people could live better lives, live them longer. We've come to a stage now where we can keep people alive much longer. Now, the question is, in what kind of state are they kept alive much longer? And obviously, if you're living a long life, you want that to be a healthful life, and you want it to be a meaningful life. So how do you achieve all that? And that's where this book came about. The second edition is brand new. It's being published by Springer, who is a foremost academic publisher, and it's available for everybody. It's deliberately written in a way that's a little bit challenging, but it's easily understandable by people who want to really know something about how to live a long life and how to build a strategy. The strategy basically is three parts. And what's come to the fore mostly, recently especially, is in our face, is that you have to have a stable society on every level. In other words, you can't expect to have a long life if you're going off to war, for example, and if your environment where you live is not safe and secure. And that means not only from the point of law and order, it means from a point of view of the air you breathe, the water you drink, whether you have good habitation, if you live in a place where you have adequate heat, light, food, the supply chains have to be going. I could go on and on with this. We could do a whole hour on what society should be doing and possibly doing better in certain instances. That is one big aspect, and that's the foundation to living a long and healthy life. So the long life strategy is based on three legs, and that's one of them, what society should be doing. And the important part to remember about that is we are society. We decide how all this happens, but we do it collectively because no one of us, no matter what kind of credentials we have, is capable of doing this alone. This is an interaction of all of us working together to create the society we want. The other two legs are obviously what the medical profession and researchers can do for you. And of course, the science of medicine is increasing by leaps and bounds. The amount of money and talent being poured into the research and by individuals, corporations, governments is staggering. Most people don't realize what kind of money is spent on medical care and the things that support it and the research going on. We're talking trillions. We're not talking billions, okay? And this country, the United States, has been and is way in the forefront of all of this, although there's tremendous interconnection and contributions from all over the world. So what your doctor could do for you is becoming more and more interesting, to say the least, but on the other hand, it can tend to get very impersonal, and that really gets people annoyed, including me. The third part of it, obviously, is what you do for yourself. And most books on health, or supposedly on health, talk about diet and exercise. And they're right. Diet and exercise are extremely important. Okay? If you eat healthfully and you do aerobic exercise on a regular basis, chances are good that you're going to have a better life, a longer life. And those are the basic principles underlying this book. It's basically a three-part strategy.
Okay, and recapping, and I put them in chat just so I could keep track of it. Society, what medical profession is one, what medical profession and research can do for you, and number three is what you do for yourself. I love it. Okay, now one of the things that I love, and you did this for me, is we've got this great slide here that shows the table of contents of this book. And one of the things that I've found with authors, and we did this with your other book as well, is to take a peek at some of the chapters of the book, because those are oftentimes great things that we can have a chat around. And so let's see, well, first off, Dr. Caplan, is there any particular chapter? You got 24 chapters in this book. Is there any particular chapter that you'd like to start with, or that you'd like to share something that that you feel to be extremely relevant that you don't want to miss talking about today?
Well, I think you brought up, interestingly enough, while I was waiting to come on, something very interesting, and that's about affordable housing,
Oh, yeah.
how to live, and that's become a big topic. The trick is, as you get older, to try not to go into a nursing home, no matter how good that nursing home might be. The most important thing is to try to live independently. And that's not easy to do it's easy to do when you're a kid, I guess, except that you don't have the money to
Well,
be
mom
able
and
to
dad
afford a
take care of
place to
us.
live.
Yeah.
And that's a whole problem by itself. Uh, but as you get older, it's important to maintain your integrity, your independence, and lead your life as you're used to leading it and as you want to lead it. And that involves living independently, and that involves staying in the home. And that again brings up affordability issues, and again comes down to a lot of societal stuff and how we run things. For example, suburbs. Uh, after there was no such thing as suburbs. I've been around an awful long time.
Yeah,
And
folks, I I could care less how old anybody is, but you often in our last discussion you shared your age, and a lot of people were like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." You said you've been around a long time. How old are you, Dr. Kaplan?
well, this is my 87th year. I'm 86 and change.
I
So,
love it.
uh, you want to maintain your vitality and all that, but what I was getting at is I remember things that most people take for granted. You become sort of like living history. You know, the antique industry says your age 50 is an antique. Well, it was a long time ago, age 50, and I wasn't an antique then, but right now, I fulfill the qualifications for being the oldest old. The oldest old starts at 85 by our definition. And there's a huge number of people like me in the United States. There's probably 60 million people in this country alone over the age of 65, say. And we've become a huge force, economic, politically, every way. But I can remember back to getting back to the topic of when the suburbs were formed, and that was after World War II, of course. Uh, Before that, there were no suburbs, a little hard to believe. And at about the same time, when Eisenhower was president, he built the road system that we all now take for granted and sometimes swear at, depending on the potholes. Uh, and uh, that was fine, but a lot of what happens there is the suburbs were basically single family homes. Now, years later, fast forward, you have single family homes and you have young-ish people in them raising their children, right? And they have this old relative. They have a mother, a father, maybe both. And these people uh, uh, can't live alone anymore for various medical or reasons, possibly, or possibly economic reasons. They want to sell their home and they want to move in with the kids. But the kids are living in a suburb in a single family home. So uh, there were zoning laws. And for instance, in a single family home, you're only allowed to have one kitchen in most zoning law venues. Now there are absolutely places where that doesn't hold, like at least parts of Texas, for example, where you're a little freer to do what you want. But if you want to put an addition on your home, wherever you are, so that you could move in your, say, elderly parents. And you want to say have a kitchen in that addition? In a lot of venues, you can't. So I'm going to be very interested to hear what your speaker has to say about some of these issues.
Next week. And like one of the things we're seeing are trends. Accessory dwelling units is something that some zoning areas are permitting now. That's where you could actually move in like a temporary addition and rent that out or have a loved one living there. There is movement. But the interesting thing that I thought you were going to bring up about the rise of the suburbs is the our car dependency is living a car dependent lifestyle that requires us to get in a car to find our purpose in life, and that can really have an impact on older adults if you either don't want to drive or you can't drive anymore.
That's an extremely good point. And it is interesting that sometimes when you are on one of Eisenhower's highways and you're looking at the traffic flow in both directions, what I always think of is why can't these people change places? Instead of going, half of them going from A to B and with a lot of traffic, the other half go to B to A and a lot of traffic, live close to where you work, where your kids go to school, if possible,
Yeah.
you know.
And
And it's something I tried to do in my life,
mhm.
sometimes with a considerable lack of success, but it makes for a more efficient life.
um, there's a few comments that I want to read to you. The first, Linda says, I, Dr. Caplan, I really appreciate your concepts. They're more than that. We can each choose to grow the society that serves the masses, each one caring for body, mind, and soul changes, perspectives, and intentions. Thanks for sharing that. And then Arlene says, not only impersonal, but expensive. I think this talking about healthcare and different options. If you're a middle class or above, you're good. Otherwise, we have challenges. And she asks, do you consider independent living the same as living in a nursing home? And when you said you were 87, she's 84.
Good for her. Uh, it if you're living in a nursing home, that isn't truly independent living, but it depends a lot on the nursing home. And in another book, The Care of the Older Person, I got into that with a whole chapter with a brilliant architect who was discussing how a nursing home should be designed and the philosophy behind it and the training of the people in it. And I know that you, Steve, get into these topics all the time, and it's all so important because inevitably, if you live long enough, uh, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to live independently unless you have the resources to effectively bring the nursing home into your home. And that is not cost effective for the vast majority of people.
Great. Okay, let's jump back on uh the table of contents, and thanks to everybody who's been contributing in chat. And as you can see, Dr. Caplan is one of I love having him on here because he talks about anything and everything. And as you can see by the hopefully everybody can see that, yeah, the table of contents on the screen. This covers everything from disease prevention, life expectancy, sexual dysfunction, menopause, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, cosmetic surgery, parenting and grandparenting, financial, the politics of age, anxiety, depression. Um, Here, I'm going to throw a dart at the dartboard because one of the things that I have your chapter 2, aging, can it be delayed? Can it be reversed? I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
Well,
On
this goes to actually the entire book, because if you start with, how do you live to be a long how do you live to have a long life, longer than your life expectancy? And we all have a life expectancy. How do you do that? And you start off actually with prenatal care. In other words, it starts with a healthy mother having a healthy pregnancy and being properly cared for during that pregnancy and during labor and delivery, which is huge. And that baby being born in optimal shape, and then that baby being brought up and nourished in a stable home. And then it goes all the way through of vaccinating kids against all these what were horrible childhood diseases when I was a child, which, like I say, goes back in history, when we didn't have vaccines for many of these things, and kids died, right? So you got to get through that, and all the childhood diseases that we don't particularly use vaccines for, and then you got to get through the teenage years with all the turbulence and the drug taking
Risky
possibly,
behavior. Yeah.
and the mental issues like suicide. Suicide is a big issue in teenagers, older people. It's not an issue people like to discuss, which maybe is one of the problems, right?
Mhm.
But there's all kinds of turbulence. Probably the major reason young people get killed is in accidents, car accidents, things like that. But of course, there's many other reasons. And then you have to start taking responsibility for your own health care, like we said before. And that involves your nutrition and your aerobic exercise and your sports and getting the proper advice on all that by whatever you need, physiotherapists, dietitians, coaches, trainers. And then as you get into your older age, the most important thing is to keep active, mentally, physically. And if you don't, you're going to deteriorate faster. Now, are you going to deteriorate anyhow? Well, that's, if you look at the definition of aging, that is what happens. But there's something called epigenetics, and this is discussed in the book. Epigenetics, tires don't have inner tubes anymore, right? They used to have inner tubes. And if you got a flat tire, it was the air was in the inner tubes. You took out the inner tube and you put a patch on it. Okay. Epigenetics for humans is the same thing. It's DNA repair by a chemical process called methylation. And you can tell in a human being, or a research scientist could tell, by how much repair has gone on, how old that person is relative to their nominal age. And this is your epigenetic age. And if you're healthy and you didn't need too much repair, okay, you're younger than your age. And if you're having a lot of patches on your inner tube, then you're going to be older than your age. And that's why you see people at my age, you know, some of whom unfortunately don't have their full cognition anymore. And all of us get a little frail. And, I used to walk on the street. I used to be the fastest guy walking down the street because I was thinking about stuff I had to do, right? Now I'm the slowest person walking down the street. there was a middle time when I was wondering, how come I can't keep up with everybody? Now I don't even think about it anymore. I know I'm
Well,
not keeping up with everybody.
and I think I'm glad you brought that up. And I don't know if we'll go down a rabbit hole here, but you know, as I'm listening to you, none of us have a crystal ball. I mean, we and you actually kind of brought it up in talking about the teenagers is that, accidents are one of the ways that our lives end early or we become disabled. None of us have a crystal ball, although we all imagine ourselves living to your age and beyond, and living a healthy, active, purposeful life. But I think one of the frustrating things, and I think you kind of touched on this, is that you noticed that you were slowing down, when you used to be the fastest guy on the street, and then you started slowing down. And I imagine, like a lot of us, there's a period of frustration where it's like, I can't believe that I can't keep up with all these people. I used to be the fastest one. But you just sort of talked about it where it's sort of like, look, I'm not the fastest one, but I can walk down the street and I can enjoy the sights. And there might be some things that are better about taking your time walking down the street. Am I am I
Right.
making sense with this
You're
dialogue?
100% right, and there are things you can mitigate in that middle ground, and that is you could go to your physician, make sure you're healthy and you don't have any disease issues cropping up, because disease inevitably crops up somewhere somehow. And after you see that physician of yours, then you could talk to a dietitian about whether you're eating right, and you could get involved in a exercise program, which so many of us do now. And if you do that optimally, you're going to be working with a trainer or a coach who hopefully has some feedback from your physician about what you're capable of and what you're not capable of. And you could get into sports. There are even people going into extreme sports, like Joe DeCina runs, and uh, at that level, I mean, you better be fit. So, I think most of us really, aren't running marathons,
No,
but
no,
some
and,
of us do.
yeah. Okay. Because we opened the door about ending our lives and suicide and end of life in general. And Margaret has a really good point, question that I'd love your feedback on, and that is on like medical aid and dying. She asked, do you believe in ending your life when we feel ready to die? I'm curious, as a physician, as somebody that studied this, what are your thoughts on, quality of life as we near the end?
Well, you have to understand that if you're a physician, or at least when I became a physician, we were trained that life is paramount. And in our tradition, especially in our society, say here in the United States, the individual's life is the most important thing. And what I've done my whole life as a physician is to try to keep people healthy and keep them alive, even in extremis. Now, at the other end, uh, I believe that you shouldn't keep people alive unnecessarily if they want to go. And this involves that I think every one of us, a majority of people don't even have a will. You need a will. You need documents for your doctor and your hospital. Uh, and there are such documents where you specify exactly what you want. In other words, do you want people to keep you alive no matter what? Or under which circumstances don't you want resuscitation? And if you spell all that out, it makes it very easy for everybody. Okay, now you can, it gets, it gets into another level beyond that. For instance, in Canada, I believe, and I'm no lawyer, but I believe that they now allow in certain circumstances assisted death. Uh, Whether you want to go that far or not becomes again a societal thing. There's laws about this. Do I personally believe in it? No, I believe that a person shouldn't be unnecessarily resuscitated if they no longer have their cognition, they can't really think, if their body is basically gone, they can't function. I think it's perfectly reasonable for that person to have a document, obviously sometimes years before, a sign saying, if you ever see me like this, don't do anything unnecessary to keep me alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of us would probably go there. But if you don't want to go there, you don't have to go there.
Yeah.
So that's
And
where I am on that question.
great question. And I've often found that talking about death are some of the deepest conversations that we have, and it makes us reflect on the life that we're leading. I go back to a conversation that we had recently with Sam Simon, who has been diagnosed with dementia, and he wrote a play called The Dementia Man. And in the play, he talks about researching going to Switzerland and ending his life because now he found out that he had dementia. And he's like, I used my mind my entire life. How can I have a meaningful life without my mind? Well, the funny thing is, he started writing a play about what he was going through, and he found new purpose. And I think it just goes to show that we have to be creative, but we can reinvent ourselves as our health changes and do things to live a meaningful life. But okay, Margaret asks, how can we find our epigenetics age? And I typed this into Chat GPT, and it says that uh, to access the epigenetic age is through examining of DNA patterns. Um, what are your thoughts on us? I
I
mean,
think it's going to be commercially available. It's starting to be commercially available. There's a few companies who say they're doing it. I haven't researched it, so I don't know how well they're doing it. Uh, Hopefully they're doing it well. Uh, I don't know what it gives you particularly, except information to know your epigenetic age. But if you're curious about it, I don't see why you shouldn't know about it. And then if you see that your epigenetic age is going in the wrong direction, then obviously you want to see your doctor and see what you could do about improving your health.
okay, great. And you're right. I'm going to drop in some of the companies that are claiming to do this, but as Dr. Caplan said, make sure to do your research on this because, this is new. And but uh, but I'd be curious if anybody does any research on that. Okay. Um, let me let me look at the chat here, but then I kind of want to go back to your table of contents there. I think there's some other good things we can talk about. Um, let's see. The Okay, physician's oath. Arlene says the physician's oath, do no harm. The choice on how to live, having a will, someone is your power of living. Some states do offer, I don't think in the United States we offer assisted suicide. It's called medical aid in dying, and it's not giving it's not
You're
giving
not doing
life-sustaining
anything
treatment.
active to snuff out the person's life, not in the United States.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Let's and everybody take a look at Mary's comment about the way, the ways that we could repurpose these shopping malls that are in the suburbs that are virtually abandoned to be places where people can live a more walkable lifestyle, exercise, and I'd love to see us repurpose shopping malls for to enable us to live a more purposeful life. Okay. Um, all right. So, well, let's, you know, talking, since we were talking about, uh, death and dying, chapter 21, the title of that is The Sickness and Loss of a Life Partner. Um, this can be devastating to all of us because, we walk down the aisle and we just sort of assume that our our partner, we're going to pass away on the same day at the same time, and that rarely happens. Um,
This is a huge issue. It was an issue for me, and I'm sure it's an issue for a lot of people. And as you get older, and inevitably it becomes an issue for just about everybody. You see two older people who've been together for a very long time and talk about walking down the street. Sometimes they look like an A-frame. They're leaning on each other emotionally, physically, mentally, every way. One of them goes, that's half of a joint life. Now, what happens to the remaining partner? Well, for a few days or weeks, everybody's coming around and sending their condolences and trying to cheer you up and asking to take you out and all kinds of stuff. And then everybody disappears. And now you're alone. And your kids are grown and they have their own lives, and they may not even be living in the same city or maybe even the same country as you. And how do you handle this? And I know, Steve, that you have people on all the time who are talking about this issue. Uh, and it is a very big issue. So what you have to do is, number one, two people who live together for a long time, if they have some independent interests, that's very nice. Because then at least something is going on after half this partnership is gone. Uh, and the other part is that the same wedding ceremony says, "Till death do us part." That means you have to realize it's over. And that means you have to recreate social relationships, meaningful relationships.
And that's not easy because a lot of times we might have made our last friend, new friend 40 years ago, and it's something that we talk about an awful lot here is, building that network when we've had change or loss.
Yes, and it's very difficult. Talk about your last date. Your last date may have been when you were a teenager, and uh, your last date with anybody but your eventual mate, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you don't know how to do these things. You don't know where to begin, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have a network beyond the two of you, that helps. And if you have some outside interests, that helps. And if you realize the position you're in, that's always a good place to start. And then you start thinking to yourself, okay, what can I actively do about this? Actively to change my situation, because being alone is not an ideal solution for most people.
Mhm. No, great thoughts. Okay. Um, I noticed that chapter 16 is on diet and weight loss. And and I'd also sort of like there's weight loss, but there's also I was recently talking to somebody who said that they needed to gain weight, that as they were moving through life and growing older, that they couldn't keep weight on, and they were like, gosh, I wish I had this problem back when I was younger. But any thoughts on diet and and eating healthy? And I know you've got this wonderful slide that you gave me here on what looks like an amazing feast here.
Well, this, what you're looking at is Eliza, who keeps me happy and healthy, and who fortunately is an excellent Mediterranean chef, although that's not her main uh, occupation in life. And this is just some representative things of what she does. So I'm a little spoiled, but I believe, and I always did believe, that the Mediterranean diet is one of the better things you could do. It's low on saturated fat. It's high on all kinds of healthy things. Mediterranean cooks use olive oil, which is much better for you. There's a lot of fish, vegetables, fruits made in extremely delicious ways, and it's a good diet. It happens to be what I eat. I'm not going to say that's why I'm still here, but it's one of the reasons why I'm still happy. So that's a good thing. Uh, Now, as far as gaining weight or losing weight, if you're losing too much weight, that's a really bad sign. You need to see your physician. And if you're gaining too much weight, that's really a bad sign. You have to see your physician. Basically, in this society, we have an epidemic of obesity. And mainly that's from sitting around too much, and it's from eating a lot of bad food and too much of it. So that's generalizations. Now, how to fix that is much harder. And it's much harder than actually addiction, because if you count things like tobacco as an addiction, we used to call it a habituation, but now we say it's an addiction, right? Alcohol, tobacco, uh, those things uh, are difficult to get off of. But when you get off of them, you could stop them completely. You could say to yourself, as I did many, many years ago, I'm not smoking anymore. And that day, I stopped smoking. Now, I don't know if most people could do that. Of course, I wasn't smoking cigarettes and I wasn't smoking them compulsively, so it really wasn't such a big deal, right?
Mhm.
And I know people who figured they were drinking a little too much alcohol, and they said one day, I'm not doing this anymore. And then they just didn't. But most people have a bigger problem. Now, the thing with eating is you can't stop eating, you'll die. So you can't just say, I'm not eating anymore. You could do it, and there are fasting regimes, and these are very controversial. It was on the news last night, actually, that somebody did a study that certain people who were fasting were dying at a higher rate than people who weren't fasting. But that study is arguably not great, and there are other studies that show that if you fast once in a while, maybe it is good for you. And in a lot of religions, people fast, right? And
Yeah.
it does, and they're fine. And it's sort of good for your soul once in a while. But if you fast, that's a bit extreme. If you're doing this as a regular way of keeping your weight normal. The best way to keep your weight normal, I mean, it's really common sense, is to take in as many calories as you need a day to support the weight you're at. And that has to do with what you do and how big you are, how small you are, how much exercise you do, how much physical work you do, or whether you're just sitting at a desk, and how you age. A lot of people gain a lot of weight as they get older because they're still eating the same amount as when they were much younger and very active physically and moving around and doing all kinds of stuff. And now, without noticing it, gradually, imperceptibly over the years, you're doing less and less. Well, you need less and less food, but it becomes more critical that the food you do eat is the right food and it has all the nutrients you need. So that's why you have to start leaning on your physician, a dietitian, and making sure that you're in the right balance.
All right. Well, Margaret asked about how about functional medicine as for a way of eating? And for those that aren't familiar with functional medicine, we've had a few people talk about it, but I dropped a link into chat there. But Dr. Caplan, any thoughts on this emerging practice of functional medicine?
Well, quite frankly, I haven't heard of it, so you're one ahead of me. Tell me what it is.
Okay, well, the definition, according to the Institute for Functional Medicine, is functional medicine is a systems biology-based approach that focuses on identifying and addressing the root cause of a disease. Each symptom or differential diagnosis may be one of many contributing to an individual's illness. For example, depression may be caused by many different factors, including inflammation. Likewise, the cause for inflammation may lead to many different diagnoses, including depression. The precise manifestation of each cause depends on the individual's genes, the environment, and their lifestyle, and only treatments that address the right cause have lasting benefit beyond the symptom of suppression. So,
Well, that all makes sense, and it's nice that it now has a title, so that's good. We're more focused on things like translational medicine, and what that is getting all these new treatments and ways of looking at disease, which is, by the way, a defined term, and getting it out to the people. So that's what translational medicine is. And there are people now who just focus on that. Okay, this is very nice. How do we get it out there? Where at some kind of a cost where people can use it. So
I really
that's
want to
another
read.
aspect of it.
Yeah, I love it. I really want to read Paula's comment because in question because I think it's relevant to what a lot of us are going through. And she says, my father who recently passed away had been through so many cancers and had a lot of chronic illnesses, and he fought me every day about eating properly. In fact, he smoked right up to the end. He often said, I've lived this long. What does it matter what I eat now? And I think everybody who's on this discussion is open to new ideas and thinking about how can I live a healthier life. But I think there's so many people out there like Paula's uh, dad, and you probably had many patients like this over the years. Any kind of words of wisdom to those of us
This
who
is
care about people?
it's a natural reaction. It's like I've lived a long time. Now I could do what I want, leave me alone. And that's fine if that's what you want to do, but you have to realize that you're giving up something. That, for instance, if you decide like Winston Churchill, to sit around and take a drink every now and then, and maybe more often than now and then that can harm some of your organs, notably your liver. Okay, and you may think, okay, I'm a certain age, I'm 86 going on 87, and who cares what happens? But you know, you talk about patients. I've had patients who were centenarians. They were 100, right? And they were really happy being 100 because they still had their faculties and they could still get around. They were the lucky few, and now there's much more of them, thankfully. Uh, uh, and people used to say to me, as a doctor, well, how long do you think you want to live? And I always used to say, talk to someone who's 100 years old, and you'll find out they want to live. If they're in good shape and everything's going well for them and they enjoy their life, hey, that's great. So if you shorten it a little bit now because you want to do something that's not really great for you, that's fine. It's a free country, right? Do what you want and live how you want, but realize that you may pay for it later. And maybe later you'll be sorry you did it, or maybe
Yeah.
you won't.
I love it. And I've looked at the clock and no surprise, we're almost to the top of the hour. I want to make sure that I jump back. We got the table of contents there. Again, here's the book. But what I will make sure to add on the recording link is all the details on ordering the book if you're interested in it. And Dr. Caplan has been really generous with our group in offering a 20% discount. I've dropped into chat all the links that you need to order that, but I will make sure that on the recording link at proaging.com that you have that information there as well. And as you can see, I've got on the screen the discount code, but I'll make sure that all this is easy to access on the website. If at whether it be today or 3 weeks from now, it's like, hey, I think I want to get that book that Dr. Caplan was talking about. Um, uh, Dr. Caplan, any and Jennifer is saying she saw that I had the are you a Final Four basketball fan there, Dr. Caplan?
Uh, this year I haven't really been following it. Usually
Well,
I
hey,
do.
join the feel free to join the positive aging elder tree bracket if you like. I'm dropping it into chat now because Jennifer was asking about it.
Okay.
And the and let's see. Arlene says I had a friend who passed away last month at age 103, active and living in an independent apartment, not a nursing home. Still out, I had all of her faculties except walking a little bit more slowly. It's great when we hear those stories, and I hope that every single one of us listening today are in the same boat as your friend there, Arlene. But I think Dr. Caplan, you've given us a lot of things to think about in terms of what we can do to potentially live a healthy life to the age of Arlene's friend there. Any sort of closing words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
Yes, do what you like. That helps, hopefully, the others, all the rest of us, and keep healthy. And thanks a lot, Steve. It's always a pleasure being with you.
I love it. You too. And doors always open whenever you got ideas or things that you want to share. And before we were coming on board, uh, Dr. Kaplan's other book has multiple authors, and one of the most exciting positive aging discussions was what's the name of the doctor from Pittsburgh that we had?
Michael Pinsky.
Michael Penske. We had a discussion with Michael Penske, and he was on the top of a hospital transferring some organs into a helicopter. It was the coolest thing that I had ever imagined. And he was an amazing guest. I will
He's right on the forefront, cutting edge of critical care. He's an incredible doctor and an incredible man.
yeah. So doors always open. Everybody have a great day. Thanks for contributing. And Dr. Caplan, I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks.